Are we? All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 12 o'clock. I'm going to forego the acknowledgement statements as I've already read them this morning, and I'm going to ask council if there's any declaration of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Seeing everybody shaking their heads, is there anyone that signed up for open forum? That would be you if you wanted to speak ahead of the presentation.
No, I don't need to.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to go straight to staff reports. And our staff report on public docs bylaw, and Director Engel, over to you to tell us whether we have any docs in the township and what you'd like to do with them.
Just kidding. Thanks. Through you, Mayor, to Council. A key component of our transportation network is access to waterways. The township currently maintains 10 locations with boat launches and docks, in addition to 4 locations with docks only. These facilities support residents, visitors, and commercial operators. Staff have previously been directed to report back on the feasibility of overnight mooring, and $70,000 in capital funding has been allocated to upgrade one launch at Honey Harbor to better accommodate commercial use. At present, only 2 of the 10 launch locations are designed to support commercial loading and operations. Maintenance of these water access facilities extends beyond structural upkeep. It also includes ensuring the environment is protected and the township does not assume unnecessary liability arising from how these facilities are used. For road-based activities, the township manages similar risks by issuing a road occupancy permit when contractors utilize the municipal right-of-way for staging or construction. These permits protect the township by ensuring staging activities do not restrict safe travel for other users, requiring materials to be stored appropriately and in a manner that avoids environmental harm or potential spills into the environment. It also ensures that sensitive habitats, trees, or vegetation are protected from damage. It requires proof of insurance, thereby reducing township's exposure to claims related to injuries, collisions, theft, or other incidents. And it establishes a clear mechanism for cost recovery where there is damage to infrastructure and environmental impacts. It clearly defines permitted and prohibited activities for the permit holder. Similar risks arise from commercial operator use of public boat launches. These include long-term staging and storage of materials on municipal lands, launch ramps being blocked for extended periods of time, limiting public access, uncontrolled storage of materials along shorelines with potential for environmental impacts, premature wear or damage to infrastructure from heavy commercial use, and increased township liability for hazards created by these activities. While a road occupancy permit is not directly applicable to boat launches, since it is for a single-use, single property, we can leverage what we've learned from that and issue a single-use commercial permit, which could provide comparable safeguards for other users, the environment, and the township. Commercial operators are also seasonally mooring barges along public shoreline. This has the potential to disrupt fish habitat and wetlands, conflict with areas of environmental significance or natural heritage constraints, and circumvent protections that would normally apply if a dock were being proposed. Currently, the township does not have a regulatory tool to designate appropriate areas for commercial shoreline mooring or to restrict activity in sensitive locations. Permits, whether for drivers, docks, or occupancy, are standard tools used by governing authorities to ensure activities do not negatively impact infrastructure, the environment, or other users, and place liability and responsibility on the operator rather than the municipality. Permit fees can be structured to cover solely administrative costs, or it can include a surcharge reflecting additional wear, maintenance, or monitoring requirements consistent with user pay principles, where having heavier users contribute proportionally. Several neighboring municipalities, such as Parry Sound and the Archipelago, have annual permits for commercial marine operation use of launches. Township staff have reviewed existing dock bylaw, which regulates public docks and boat launches, including provisions related to overnight mooring. Staff have issued an overnight mooring permit to Lakeland Cruises and will be piloting the impact of this permit on infrastructure and operations. Through review of the current bylaw, we've identified regulatory gaps related to commercial use of public boat launches and commercial shoreline mooring. Staff are seeking direction from Mayor and Council on whether to proceed with a further review of the bylaw with the intent to introduce specific provisions governing commercial use of launches and shoreline mooring, and update the fee schedule to reflect commercial activity and associated impacts.
Thank you. Council. Let's start with Councilor Graziano.
Thank you. Through your worship, I had a couple of questions with regards to this. And my understanding is that it's being proposed that we would attach an additional fee onto permits. Is this correct? So as a contractor that would use a barging, they would apply, or they would require to pay an additional fee based on the permit that they pull. Just trying to understand the logistics behind this.
So what we're identifying is we have no controls over the way this activity is being performed, which puts us at risk when it comes to the environment and liability for the township. So we have a couple options through permitting. We can charge an annual fee for a permit and it solely covers the cost of administration. Or we can also look at recovering costs for the additional wear and tear that they put on our infrastructure, and hopefully put money towards upgrading other launches to a condition to handle that type of traffic.
Maybe I'm confusing the term permitting. So you're saying that the barge operator would receive a permit, or would be required to pull a permit from the municipality in order to use a barge at that location, not a permit as in a renovation permit that then on top of their permit costs would have to then, if a barge is required, pay that additional fee. How is that?
So the commercial operator, whether it's a barge operator, whether it's marina that's using our launches to launch large boats, any commercial operator will pull an annual permit. It would be good for the year, and it would be good for any launch within the township.
Understood. Okay, so it's a one-time fee that they would pay annually, and there could be just the administrative costs, or we could add. Understood. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
Councilor Predko.
Thank you. And then really just to clarify on that point, in terms of having the registration, would you be looking for confirmation of insurance and other types of pieces of information to make sure that the township is their liability issues are covered?
Exactly. We would have certificate of insurance. We would have guidelines on, where they can put material, how long they can store material, anything that creates a risk for the township.
Okay, I mean, and one thing I want to share, I don't know, on Go Home Lake, there's a lot of concern from residents that this is going to start as a contractor issue and move into a residential use of the launches, especially for people who have building materials and appliances and furniture delivered and left beside the launches. The brick, Muskoka lumber, they come and they drop off things, and if you're not there, they leave it there. So I'm just thinking there's right now concern that they're going to start being a township charge for people having deliveries left on the launches and on the docks. And as we're going through this, I want to make sure that we're going to be very clear that we're trying to look at the exposure that the township has for a large commercial operator, not for a residential operator that is really just trying to pick up a new fridge.
Exactly, and this is why we're looking at permitting commercial operators and use of the launch instead of trying to go through a process of restricting materials getting dropped off. It just, it wouldn't be feasible. And it's the nature of the beast. That's part of the program. What we do have concerns with is construction material that's stored for days and weeks and partially left there, aggregates that now are running off into the waterways and creating silts and sediment, hazardous materials being stored. So that's just where 90% of our commercial operators are fantastic. 10% can make the rest look bad, and those are the ones that we want to have mechanisms to be able to say, hey, you have this permit, you agreed to this, you're not doing it.
And just one quick follow-up. I guess you don't have any sort of idea right now where you'd be looking at placing that permit fee in that $75 to $500 range that you've mentioned in your report.
So for that, we'd be looking for direction from council. Perry Sound, other municipalities charge $500. If it was, I believe it's around 300 if we're looking at a road occupancy permit, something similar to that. It would depend on what the appetite is as council. I would even suggest $1,000 for the season is not significant, but that we can put 500 into capital to go into upgrading our launches to hard surfaces so they can better withstand the loads that the launches are putting on that infrastructure.
Okay. All right. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bocek.
Thank you for the report. I find it very interesting. Most of the contractors within the township have their own lots with their own launch ramps. There's a few that do use public launch ramps, and this has been a practice that's been happening for the 40 years that I've been here. And there's been no real issue with it until I read it in this report here today. Being that this is Cowan, we have a little more freedom to speak. It seems like this council and the previous councils just continue to make bylaws, more bylaws, more bylaws. When I came here, we had one bylaw officer, then it became 2, then it became 3, then it became 4, then it became part-time students. That's a huge cost to the township. And I'm not sure that this would mitigate anything to try and recover those costs. And this is very similar to a commercial truck driving down one of our roads. Our taxpayers pay for those roads to be maintained. Transport trucks, lumber delivery trucks, everything else. I don't think there should be a difference between what the taxpayers pay for, especially the island residents who pay huge taxes and get very little for it. The launch ramp is one thing they do get for it, and they get all their renovation materials and furniture, everything delivered by these very few launch ramps. So I'm not totally opposed to this, but for the reasons that I've mentioned, I would not recommend this going to council from Cal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
Just a couple of questions, if you don't mind, but thank you for the report. Very interesting. First of all, I just wanted to delve into this. I think it's called Lakeland Cruises or something like that. And they would be located at the $100 million dock that we have sitting out there. Okay. It's lovely dock. I go and feel it all the time. That's really exciting. But I just wanted to understand in terms of dollars and cents, it's $2 a foot, what, for the year?
Per foot per day.
Per foot per day.
Per day. And so what sort of usage are we talking about? And how big is the boat?
I think it's a 30-foot boat. Yeah, I was going to say 20. It's like 28 point something. It's like
Oh, so
just
it's
shy of 30
pretty
feet.
tiny.
That
Relative
doesn't feel
to,
right, but now that I'm saying that, but I feel like
relative to
40 foot. Okay, thank you.
40
Sorry.
foot?
40-foot boat.
It's a little bit bigger. Yeah,
Yeah.
but not certainly any of the size of the cruise boats that we see out of Midland or Penetang. And so it's per foot per day for a 40-foot boat. So, all right, $80 a day, right?
Mhm.
Times, and what are we talking about in terms of frequency?
So they are mooring at that location. They are providing transportation to Parks Canada.
Yes.
So they are there from just before the May long weekend until I believe it's after the Thanksgiving weekend.
So they've committed to that. We have some.
So we have an agreement with them. It again allows us to have a certificate of insurance from them. And we have an agreement in place. So
for 6 months or whatever, it's 5
Yeah.
months or whatever the heck it is.
So aside from the fees, we are also protected from liability.
I see. Okay, well, that's interesting. And in terms of the charges, you know, I can understand trying to defray some of the costs for maintaining our facilities. And this one location we're talking about right now is it's quite expensive. Sooner or later, the legacy costs are astounding. So I'm hoping we can. Now that's not a launch ramp, mind you, but it still could generate revenue, is what you're saying. And whether it's revenue from mooring a boat like this, a tour boat, or individuals, if we can collect the equivalent or close to as they would pay at a marina, that could be maybe reasonable. Why not? I mean, others are paying for their marina, don't have the use of these docks, and so that might be deemed to be fair. So I'm interested in this. Thank you.
My quick math says 40 feet times $2 times 150 days is $12,000 for the year.
I didn't do the last calculation.
Well, while you were talking, I did.
Well, that's pretty reasonable. You know, in terms of should be expecting that. Hopefully it works out for this period.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I like the idea of this report, notwithstanding the concerns that we've seen via correspondence from 6 Mile Lake cottagers. And I think we've got to address that. But I'm thinking of particularly about the ramp in Honey Harbor. They can get very congested with stuff that just sits around and makes things really, really awkward, or gets congested with loads of stuff going out so fishermen can't launch their boats. And at the same time, putting significant strain on that ramp itself, which I know we're going to be working on repairing. So I like the concept. I hope it can evolve into something that will work for everybody. And certainly having a little bit of money is a very specific application. And in light of comments made by Councillor Bochek, we have a population that's using our facilities more and more, and somehow we've got to figure out how to recoup the cost of maintaining those facilities. And it's very, very specific. And I look at launch ramps particularly, and I don't see why we shouldn't be looking at recouping some of the cost of those people using those ramps. So that's great. I really appreciate the report.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you. Great report. Thank you. Great direction. And you're looking for more direction. So maybe I can offer some comments here. First of all, we'll start at the bottom of my page here. We have commercial operators in the area of Honey Harbor. I'm going to speak only of Honey Harbor here. Commercial operators in the area of Honey Harbor, they have their own ramps, they maintain their own ramps, and they pay mega dollars in taxes for the privilege of having those properties on the edge of the shoreline. And then we have lots of other contractors who come in and for today get a freebie on the public launch ramp. I'm not sure that these commercial operators that own their own ramps like that fact that these other guys get a freebie. So I think that if we think about potentially fair strategies, we should be doing something in the way of funding the access to that public ramp for commercial use. One of the things that you and I have talked about before is the deterioration of that public launch ramp in Honey Harbor is so significant that the marina operator immediately beside it is frequently asked to tow people out of the water when their trucks get stuck. Clearly, the ramp is beyond reasonable condition and needs to have investment, which is why you've got that number to start the process. But I think we have to recognize that we're in a world where even these commercial operators aren't going to let their competitors use their ramp. So we have a ramp as a township. It costs us money to maintain it. There needs to be some mechanism, and I love the concept that you have come up with here of a launch use permit. I think that $1,000 a season for any of these commercial operators is mostly inconsequential. I also love the fact that you have an idea here for on the road material storage permits to do that, which if there is a fee associated with something, people are more likely to do the right thing as opposed to take advantage of it. So I think that from what I've heard you say and some other stories, there are people who are taking advantage of kind of the liberties of no policies being in place, which is unfortunate, but as I think you said, it's not the 100% people who are violating it, it's probably 5 or 10. But that's why we have bylaws in the first place, to provide initial guidance and help people clearly understand what they should be doing, and then help those who want to violate it understand that there can be consequences. So I'm fully supportive. I think what you're starting up here is fabulous, and we need to go full steam ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make a couple of comments and then we'll go around two. I think I want to first respond to Councillor Vocek's complaint that what a pain in the butt township is because we're getting more and more bylaws and more regulations and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when there were no speed limits on the waterways. And then they started bringing those in. And what a pain, because some of them came in just because of wake damage, but then they stuck. Sorry? Yeah, well, and some people never respect them anyway. But I've observed that in the, damn it, 60 odd years I've been coming here, there's a hell of a lot more traffic. There's a hell of a lot more people, a hell of a lot bigger boats, a hell of a lot bigger cottages, et cetera, et cetera. And you referred to 10% versus 90%, and it's the 10% that are the problem, the 10% who are lousy neighbors. I don't care whether they're commercial operators or they're summer residents or what have you. Those 10% cost everyone else a bucket load, but I think we need to have some of those bylaws in place, unfortunately, because some people have to be told at night you shouldn't be shining a light off your cottage right in the eyes of a pilot going by in a boat. I'm giving like totally unrelated examples, but I think unfortunately we need that. What I like about this discussion is the idea that commercial operators will understand the guidelines. And I'm willing to bet for 90% of the commercial operators, okay, that's the way they operate anyway. You know, if they're going to leave a load of gravel at the side of the road, they want to use it quickly because that's their money invested in that load that they can't invoice to the customer until it's used. I mean, and so in my opinion, I think it's quite worthwhile to have these guidelines in place. I personally get very frustrated when I see, for instance, on some of our roads, clear damage on the edge of the road by equipment being transported up and down the road, and the tracks on it is just torn into the side of the road. And I'm thinking they should pay for fixing that road. My place is on a private lane, and it's designed for cars. And sometimes oversized trucks and equipment go in there. And the agreement we have with any contractor brings oversized equipment in, you leave that lane as in at least as good a shape as you found it, and go ahead. And they do. They grade it at the end if necessary, what have you, because it's a fair deal. I think we should do the same thing with township assets. If they're ruining our assets or damaging them, they should cover it. I'm willing to bet most aren't, other than usual wear and tear. But the other thing I wanted to comment on is fees. And, you know, at one point we heard $300 or $500 or $1,000. You spread that, let's make it $1,500 over 150 days of activity. I don't know, if you do the math, it's $10 a day, I think, if that's correct math. I don't think their customers would notice if the customer was charged an extra $10 a day for the 5-week contract going on. It's certainly nothing compared. I mean, they pay so much more than that for 1 hour of actual work on their property. Like, you know, but I think I'm not worried about the fees. I don't think we're going to have skyrocketing fees. I think it's important that you say that we're not worried about people making one-off deliveries. You know, if that fridge is at the side of the road, well, if I were the card, you're expecting that fridge, I don't want to leave it there very long. And it's not worth chasing that. So anyway, I think unfortunately, can I put it that way? Unfortunately, I think it's important that we get some guidelines in and say what our overall expectations are. And I think actually the majority of contractors won't have a concern about it. I mean, of course they'll complain about they have to fill in some more paperwork. That's fair. But the paperwork they have to fill in is nothing compared to what the building department wants from them or the planning department. Oh, nobody's giving me a dirty look. I love it. But they're thinking it. I know they are. Anyway, those are my initial comments. We're going to start round 2, and we're going to go to Councillor Graziano, please.
Thank you, and through your mayor. You know, I perceive Councillor Bocek to have a wealth amount of knowledge with regards to construction in this community. Him and his family have been rooted into this community for quite some time, and I kind of, based on his comments earlier, I kind of see where I think this is a concern in my context, or from my perspective rather. I see this providing somewhat of a competitive advantage to those that own properties where they can moor their barges on their own lands, because they would not have to be purchasing this permit. And so the cost would disadvantage the person who doesn't own property and advantage those that do. And here's why: because the non-property owner, the person or the contractor that would be using our public docks, would then effectively have to price accordingly to their customers and pass on that pricing to their customer and the increase of pricing, whereas the property owner, who, by the way, in parallel of owning that property, is gaining equity on that property, would not have to pass on that cost. And if that cost is passed on to the homeowner, well then, from my perspective, it is a double tax, because the homeowner is already paying for the launch vis-a-vis their property tax. And so it's this circular logic that we're applying here, the end result being that one is being advantaged to the detriment of the other, and the homeowner is likely still going to have to pay the cost associated with this permitting, which effectively is now double billing the homeowner, which is our resident. So that's a concern that I have, and that's how I perceive this. The other component here is we've heard that their contractors currently leave aggregates amongst other renovation supplies at our launches. And if I had to pay a permit, at least based on my logic, I would then make full use of the ability to leave my debris there, rather than the honor system, which would kind of make me feel like I have to respect the property. This is how I would, I guess, approach it. Maybe I'm wrong in that sense, but if I'm paying for it, I'll use it to its fullest. And if I'm not, and it's an honor system and I have to show respect in order to keep this a free service, then I would probably want to clean up my mess. And so the question is, rather than seeking a cost to the contractor, why aren't we not looking at strengthening our bylaws around leaving aggregates and hazardous materials or environmentally hazardous materials at these sites over long periods of time and penalizing them through tickets, rather than finding a way to charge for a permit. So from that perspective, I feel that maybe this could potentially make environmental issues or concerns worse, not better. Because again, if I'm paying for it, then at least now I have a permit that justifies the fact that I can leave my aggregate there or whatever other materials there because, hey, I'm paying for the use of it. Have we considered a business license? You know, other municipalities use business licenses, and to mitigate this unfair advantage, maybe we apply business license across all of our contractors. So this way it's fair. And then we redeploy some of those monies towards the upkeep of our public assets. The owners versus non-owners comment that we've heard is an interesting one. We heard that, I think, here, and the concern that I have is I want to draw a parallel. I believe that there was a comment made with regards to a property owner who's paying immense amount of property taxes, and therefore that property owner is already paying for the use of their barge, even though they're not using our facilities. And if that's the justification that we're going to apply, then I would say that the same should be applied for the contractor that uses our roads that doesn't pay property taxes. Why aren't we permitting their trucks to use our roads in order to recuperate the cost for the wear and tear of our roads as well? Because it's the same theory. If a property owner or if a contractor who owns property has their own launch, you know, is having to pay through their property tax for the use of a public launch and one of their competitors, then we should be, you know, and that's justifying the permitting fee, then perhaps we should also apply a permitting fee for non-property owner contractors in our municipality to use our roads. So we are maintaining upkeep on our roads as well. I'm concerned, and then this also begs the question, what about those that do own property that have barges? I'm assuming that they still use our public launches too at times. And does that mean that they would have to pay for a permit in order to use if they were going to try to sneak in a quick, you know, on and off? They're damaging potential public property as well. And what would this cost to police? So what would the cost be to the municipality to ensure that bylaws out there, you know, pursuing those that are not actively acquiring permits? And how would that work with regards to the jurisdictions, the waterway jurisdictions? So if a contractor happens to hear that bylaw is en route and he lifts or she lifts their gates and now they're floating, is that the jurisdiction of the federal government, the province? Would bylaw have any jurisdiction to be able to apply our you know, ticketing system if a ticket was allowed, and or if we pass a policy around that? And so there's just so much complexity here that I think perhaps there might be a better mechanism in place, and I would again suggest that we strongly reconsider this. I think that ultimately the homeowner is going to pay one way or another. And to me, that's a double tax. So I'm going to conclude here.
Director Engel.
So I think there were a few questions in there. I'll try to cover as okay. There's a few points brought up. In regards to the unfair competition, it is already unfair competition for those that own their own site properties because they are paying for a ramp solely for their use. We are looking at, when we're charging seasonal permit, we are looking for multiple contractors who are using that to be paying a small portion of the cost for us to, over the life of that ramp, maintain it. So they are already at an unfair advantage. We are to some degree balancing it. The fee is nominal. The impact overall is not aggressive. What we are looking at is being able to have something formal that we can clearly outline. These are our expectations when you're using our infrastructure, and these are what we are agreeing to is if you are using our infrastructure. And from my perspective, having that liability insurance in place. I know this is new, but we have seen progressively liability impacts. If you build it, they will sue us. And currently we have no protections. So in my mind, protecting us from liability and ensuring that we have that agreement and conversation with those commercial operators beforehand to protect our environment are the two key components of this. When it comes to, why now? Why not before? I don't want anyone doing the math, but I worked up here 30 years ago. And when I worked on Gloucester Pool 30 years ago, the only thing we saw was the large boats coming through the locks. And there was very, very little traffic. This past summer, I go for a ride on the lake, and there are sea-doos all over there. There are boats all over the place. These are inexpensive. They're rentals. They're people who don't have a lot of boating experience that are sharing this infrastructure with commercial operators, and things have changed. We have on our roads a permitting process that I have a contractor on a road right now, and I stopped by and said, where's your road occupancy permit? Because through that road occupancy permit, he has to provide a traffic control plan to show that he's not impacting traffic flow, that he has all the controls out so he's safe and our road users are safe, that he's providing me with the certificate of insurance, and then he's also saying, this is exactly what I'm doing here. So if he goes away and there's damage to that, I can go back to him and say, here's the permit, you caused the damage, you are paying me to repair that damage. It's not on the tax base to handle that damage. So we already have this for contractors that are working within our right-of-ways. We are looking at carrying those same protections into the extension of our right-of-way, which is our launches.
Your worship, may I? Given that Ms. Engels chose to provide her commentary, I just want to remind the diocese here today that we are not necessarily disadvantaging current homeowners because they chose to purchase a home and or a property that would allow for them to create a launch. That was their own decision. They're gaining equity on that property. So in fact, they're advantaged because their properties are growing by way of equity year over year. And in addition to that, they're paying down mortgages. This is a private asset that they own. And we can't conflate private assets and say just because they own and they've endeavored to, as a business decision to purchase a private asset that would then allow them to facilitate their business, that they're disadvantaged by way of someone using a free public asset. So I just want to remind everyone here today that I don't see this as a disadvantage. I definitely see this as they're the advantage because they actually have physical assets that they can use to leverage against bank loans, amongst other things. Anyways, here nor there. Thank you.
Councilor Predko.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, just a couple of points, and I'll try not to repeat what's being said. I understand the benefit of having a registration system. I'm really concerned about the cost and the way that it's applied across the township. So, it will be transferred to the homeowner, and the homeowner is the person that's already paying property taxes. So I really think we need to be careful that, and I think Councillor Graziano used the term double taxing, but I don't want it to be perceived that we're adding fees on top of what's already being taxed, and the fees are unreasonable. In that it's expensive enough to try to do anything in our township already. If we're adding more fees, it becomes more challenging for anybody to get work done. And part of the owner owned launch on their own property is a very different environment with the inland lakes than the Georgian Bay operators. We don't, I don't know that on 6 Mile Lake or on Gibson Lake or Go Home Lake, Gala Lake, Myers Lake, there is a person who is a contractor that owns a property that has their own private launch. So out of necessity, everybody does use a public launch. And the one thing that I think needs to be considered as well for these inland people as well is that there is the opportunity to hire a contractor from out of the township that may not have an agreement or a registration, and they bring in a barge and launch it from Miners Bay, or they launch it from 6 Mile Lake. They've maybe been hired because they're less expensive or whatever than somebody local. So I'm not sure how the enforcement would work in that kind of situation where somebody is coming in and circumventing the registration process because we don't have the enforcement tools in place to take care of that. Thank you.
Dr. Engel.
Similar to what Perry Sound does, there is a one-time fee. Their one-time fee is $75. So if it is an external contractor that's coming in, then they would have the option of purchasing a permit for the season and hoping they get more work, or a one-time fee. But again, we get that certificate of insurance. They have an understanding of exactly what they can and can't do within the township of Georgian Bay.
Then just as a follow-up, how do we make sure that they do proactively get that permit? And this isn't as much for the liability reason, and that's what you would want them to register for. It's not the $75, but you want to make sure that if there's a problem, that there is insurance coverage for whatever might transpire. So how do we have signs at our launches that say before you put anything in the water, go to the township office and register?
So similar to what we do when it comes to road occupancy permits and other permitting, it's an education process, and we would be looking at more education than enforcement for the first season. And typically you need a building permit, you need planning approval, anything along that line. So when we have initial meetings on sites with larger projects, that discussion comes up. That, you know, when I meet with developers, I'm telling them, okay, you're going to be working within the right of way, you're going to need a road occupancy permit. What we've done in the past in other areas is when they get the building permit, they're also issued, you have to have a launch permit in place, you have to have this, you have to have that, and it's educating through that. If they're working with the launch in a large enough project that they're willing to come from another area, they're usually getting other permits from us as well. But it'll take time to educate, and there's certainly times that today is a perfect example where I drove up the road and saw activity that shouldn't be happening, and said, do you have a road occupancy permit? And they didn't. So I said, you need to get one. And that we're not looking at shutting down work or anything along that line. We're looking at, okay, before the end of the day, make sure you put the application in.
Councilor Wojcik.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Just to continue on and not to rant and repeat, but knowing the history of this township, we have a lot of contractors that have made arrangements with other contractors or marinas in order to support their needs. And I'll give you an example. Mr. Jarvis can attest to this. Big Red Works, they use Phil Langley's for loading all their material there, keeping it there, launching, doing everything there. Blue Water has Salos Construction, which does the exact same thing. A&A Services probably supplies dockage for 8 contractors, 8 different contractors, Picnic Island, CNC. They have plumbers, electricians, carpenters, use their marina facilities and pay for that, and pay extraordinarily high prices for that. If they're given the opportunity to pay $10 a day for a commercial launch ramp within our township, they're going to look at it and go, I'm paying $5,000 a year here. I'm just going to move out of here and start using the public launch ramps. And I think it's going to create a big overload at the launch ramps. Not only that, but the lumber, the pit run, whatever it is that's being stored beside there, it's stored in these private marinas without an issue. And they, use a bobcat to load up the barge, and away they go. You take all this traffic that is currently supported by our marinas, and that's part of the revenue generation of these marinas and construction outfits. I think we're taking something away that's very valuable and putting something in place that is not so valuable. We want to keep the construction traffic on these launch ramps down to a very minimum. And I think if we put this into place, a lot of those contractors that are currently paying for private dockage are just going to go, what a deal. And they're going to forego their leases and start using our public launch ramps. And that's not really a question or something I need an answer to. I'd just like you to put that into consideration as we're moving towards bringing this into council.
Director Engel.
Through you, Mayor Coots here. It's certainly something we can discuss with other municipalities that have put this into place, whether or not they saw any change in the usage of their sites going from private marinas to public launches. As someone who has over 30 years in construction, my best case scenario is I have my own secured private staging area. Even with that, I am having security because I'm having materials stolen from that. So I would imagine for most of these commercial operators, it's worth it to have an operation where their materials are being protected, as opposed to leaving them on the side of our public launches where any Joe Blow can come through and say, hey, I need a couple new boards for my dock. Look what's sitting here. I'll help myself. And that's in part why we want to have that liability waiver as well, so that we are not being held responsible for materials that are stolen, that are being stored on the side of the road.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. And I sort of hesitate to use this term, but I'm really having difficulty with the logic around the arguments that I'm hearing against doing what you're suggesting. And the reason I say that is that if you think about it, an operator, a construction company that has their own site, they do pay commercial rates for their taxation. They pay high insurance, all to be able to provide a ramp and so forth on their facility. And that in turn gets billed out to the customers. In this way, we would supply the insurance in order to make sure we look after our risks, as I think you've suggested. But we would be defraying some of the costs of maintaining a facility that would allow contractors to not have to own their own ramp and not have their own site. So I'm just trying to understand the logic. I don't see how the homeowners, they're either going to pay through a contractor that has a site, secure site with a ramp, or they're going to pay somebody to come and use our ramp, or who would be using our ramp, I mean. And in that way, it's sort of fair. One way or another, you're probably going to, as the homeowner, pay for the finished service, and it might include the use of this ramp, or it might include where contractors have their own ramps. You've covered your costs to make a profit. You need to make a profit. So I'm having difficulty seeing any reason why this wouldn't be a logical solution. Thank you.
Councillor Hazel.
again. I just wanted to point out, we heard that if we start charging a fee for the current launch ramps that are free, that all these non-owners of launch ramps, contractors, are going to go racing away from those commercial contractors that they're currently doing business with so that they can pay these $1,000, $1,500 fees. But it's free today. Like, logic doesn't support that concept in any way, shape, or form. If they were going to leave their commercial operator partner and use their ramps, if they were going to go away from them because it's free, or we're going to charge $1,500, like, they would have done that already. They're using those commercial operator partners for very good reasons. So I suggest that that is a fallacy. The other key thing that I wanted to highlight here, though, is, and again, we're talking about who's paying for who and who's getting dinged. The residents who pay contractors for, whether it's I own my own launch ramp or I might have to pay a fee for a launch ramp, those are only the residents who are under construction. And what is that? 15% maybe of the properties out there? Pick 20%. 20% of the people out there are paying their contractors for the use and maintenance of this township launch ramp. Everybody else shouldn't be paying for it, but today they are, because the costs that the township incurs to maintain that public launch ramp in Honey Harbor is spread across the tax base. There's nobody paying for the use of that. So this concept of a user pay thing just makes sense. And the people who are going to pay are the people who are under construction. And let's face it, if somebody is building anything out in Georgian Bay, they're spending a minimum of $50,000 to $500,000 to $1 million to build it. So sharing a fraction of a $1,500 annual fee is chump change, not even worth talking about. But the thing that drives me most positive on this thing is what our director has shared with us, which is this is a process that allows us to get insurance coverage. And I had an interaction with our CAO and Director Engel at the Honey Harbor launch ramp, and I heard the words, I don't know if we're going to do this because I don't know if we're insured. And I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. We might have to close the launch ramp down because we can't get insurance. But this is a path to cover our risk. And although I hate insurance companies, I also hate more the fact that we can't do business and can't do things because we're not properly covered. So I think that this has got to be, that the fact that we can issue a permit and require insurance is absolutely critical. It's sort of similar in some respects to a fire permit. I get a fire permit and I'm getting no service, but I'm signing a little paper form that says, I fully understand what I'm putting out on my property and all the risks associated, and if I violate anything, I'm paying. That's essentially what these permits do. Now, a small cost to help maintain the launch ramp, that's a bonus, but insurance coverage and acknowledgement of what the risks are is really in many respects no different than a fire permit, and everybody has adopted the fire permit. I don't think we've had any real significant drop off now that we're charging $20 a year for a fire permit. Nobody cares. So I say full steam ahead. You're doing a great job. Keep going. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, do you want to jump into this round?
What Al said.
Okay. Yeah, I was all prepared to make a few comments, and some of them have now been stolen, so that's fine. But I do want to make the observation that if we are worried about so-called double taxation, I don't think that's valid, and I don't think it's valid in the sense of, yes, the person who is paying their share of the contractor's annual fee, whatever it may be, is paying that, and they've also paid the taxes to maintain the ramp, but in theory, the fees that we're collecting from the contractor should be reducing our costs. If we especially put a maintenance fee into it, should be reducing the cost to all the taxpayers. And you know, it's like we don't hand out building permits for free or planning permits for free. And we don't do that because we think that the individual benefiting from the services at that time should pay more than every other taxpayer. In other words, if I want a building permit, do I expect every taxpayer in the township to pay for my building permit? Well, that'd be nice. But they're not getting a new building, only I am. And so therefore I pay a fee to get my building permit. I think it's the same sort of thing here. And I think I'm hopeful that Councillor Hazelton's suggestion that 10 to 20% of our residents are under construction every year is not true, as much as some contractors may love it, because does that mean every third, fourth, or fifth cottage you see on your bay is actually under construction this year? Sometimes, some years, yeah, it feels that way, but well, that varies. We're not going to go down that road. Anyway, no, again, I'm going to repeat myself, so I'm going to end soon, but I think the idea of contractors understanding the conditions of using the ramp and paying what was effectively a nominal fee makes perfect sense. With that, I'm seeing a crowd growing in the back. And though it may be a little bit unusual, does anybody want to make any comment before I start round 3? Then please do. The game is you come up, you identify yourself so that the clerk can record it, and you be as brief as you can making your point. Come up here and go in front of the microphone so that anybody watching can understand what you're saying.
All right, I don't do this much. I'm Andrew Ashcroft. Oh, okay. I'm Andrew Ashcroft. I run a small construction business, and to be honest with you, I don't have a huge the whole public ramps. We don't use a ton of them. I'm probably here more just we use. I guess we would use the 12-mile one the odd time. Just simply not going around with all point. Makes it easier. We put a dock in there. We can drop off a piece of equipment. As a whole, I don't think this. I just don't understand why we have to put a fee in on this. We all pay rates. The customers pay rates. And to the 10 to 20% under construction point, everybody in the township every 5 years, if it's 20%, is under construction. Somebody. We have 200, 300 customers out there. Appliances daily. We have every one of our customers probably gets an invoice once a year for something we do. So at 12 Mile, if they hire me to go over to pick up appliances and bring them over, $75. All the 12 Mile is serviced by Harrison Trail. That's a private road, right? They pay for all that. They have a terrible road, 12 Mile Bay Road, which is in shambles. We're not here to talk about 12 Mile Bay Road. If you want to bark that, that's what everyone says. Oh, it's someone else's problem. Okay. Anyway, I don't think it's fair to any of the people that are already paying. And to say that it's basically like buying insurance. Like when you said about 10 to 20% are paying for the public launches because they're under construction. But it's like, when you buy insurance, you buy in as a whole. That's what your taxes do. You buy in as a whole. And I just think it's just another motion towards small fees being implemented. It's like boiling a frog. You eventually just kill it. Like we keep getting these small fees introduced across our township. And then for us, I only have one. I'm myself in the office. I do all my estimates, all my paperwork at like between the hours of 3 in the morning and 7 a.m., between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. I'm burned the candle at both ends. I have to fill out more fucking paperwork than I know what to do with just to apply for a building permit. And then I have to get this and I have to get that and I have to get my customers to sign it. I just think we're going down a road where we just keep implementing costs and adding more to do. And it just, end line user is, it just keeps bringing up the cost. So I don't agree with it. I don't think guys should trash. I think maybe people should be penalized if somebody is not treating ramps with respect. If they're in there, I know it's hard when you're pulling a front loader off, you wash out, you know, I understand that. I understand that the washout's bad. It's hard for people with, but I just think it's just another step towards additional fees that just don't need to be there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Councilor Hazelton.
Yes.
So while you're there,
Yep.
you just brought up a really good point. The front loaders with backwash and ruining the ramp.
Mhm.
We've got that problem in spades in the Honey Harbor ramp.
Mhm.
So who should do the repairs?
Township.
Who should pay for the repairs?
The township.
Township. Okay, Director Engel, can you give us an idea what the cost would be to refurbish the Honey Harbor ramp to a reasonable state so that Rick's Marina doesn't have to haul people out with a skid steer when they get stuck almost every time they try to launch or come out?
Current budget right now is 70,000 to upgrade that ramp to be applicable for commercial use.
Okay,
So
we gotta-
that's what we're looking at is we don't have the money to upgrade our ramps. Our available funds in our capital reserve are not there to upgrade these ramps.
Okay.
So if we want to continue to make them consistently usable for commercial operation, we need support from commercial operation.
And is that a concrete base or just gravel being dumped in or? Okay.
So the current ramp is gravel.
Yeah.
And the current ramp is being destroyed by contractors so that the public can't use the ramp. And it's a joint, public and contractor use. But the point is, you're saying the township should repair it. Well, sadly, in the world of townships, everybody says, well, the township's got lots of money, they can go and do it. Well, the township only has money because taxpayers pay. And we pay more and more and more. So you're getting more and more permits, but what I think we're trying to do here is channel the focus on who is getting the service. And maybe what we need to do is go to the building department and the planning department and say, maybe we should put a nominal $1,000 fee, $1,500 fee at every building permit.
Councillor Hazelton.
I'm being cut off.
Yes, you are, because this is not the time to espouse the solution. This is to ask this gentleman questions for more information.
So,
Councillor Graziano.
Did
you want to respond first?
Yeah, sorry, to that point, I guess that the building permit fees are already, I mean, Kaylee, what's an average building permit right now?
Depends on what you're building.
Yeah, so like the average building permit would be like, depending on what you're doing, obviously a dock's small, but a building permit, by the time you pay all your fees and everything, could cost $20,000 to $40,000, right? That's a pretty good number. That would be bottom, not quite high, but well, I mean, all, yeah.
All right, we're going to go to Councillor Graziano and then Councillor Bocek, please.
And these are comments. I don't have a question for the gentleman, so you're good unless you want.
Don't run yet. Councillor Bocek, do you have a question for this? Yeah, okay. Sorry? Yeah, we'll get there, but I'm trying to finish this. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I apologize.
That's okay.
Councillor Bocek.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mayor, thanks for stepping forward and speaking on this matter. It sounds to me like some of us are saying $70,000 to maintain this launch ramp. I would ask our finance director, if that's $70,000 and that ramp is gonna last 10 years or 15 years, say 10 years at $70,000. You know how much that is per year, because you're in treasury, you know how to add and subtract. So for that amount, amortized over that 10 years, what does that cost a taxpayer per year?
Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Bocek. I think one of the bigger issues is that we're not putting those funds aside in advance to pay for. We're not taxing it out at the onset based on amortization. So currently through our asset management plan, we set aside funds about close to $2 million for ensuring that our assets are up to date. But currently we're using those funds immediately and we're not replenishing that reserve. So the bigger issue is that we don't tax enough currently to ensure we're putting funds aside for something such as one contract.
Sure, and I know that's talking about the.
Can I be simplistic for a moment?
Sure.
We know, excuse me, we know that about $100,000 a year is 1% on the taxes. So if we chose to put $100,000 a year into launch ramps, because let's say we have 10 ramps and every year we're replacing one of them, that means it would cost our taxpayers 1% more a year to maintain launch ramps at that, I'll call it higher standard. Just,
okay, so
that's in the back of your mind.
Sure, thank you. So you take that amount there, which is very minimal. Then you look at the cost of the planning fees that are being paid, the cost of the building of permits that are being paid, and this on top of that. I think we don't need to look at a separate fee. I think the funds are already there. They need to be reallocated. They need to be put in the budget for next year. They're not in the budget for this year. But let's look at these ramps, look at the lifespan of these ramps, look at the cost of these ramps, and then in the next year's budget, make a formulation that says, okay, in order to keep these launch ramps up, it's going to cost us this amount of money per year. Look where the revenues are already coming and see if we actually need the rest of this. Because I just see an administrative nightmare right from the very beginning, as far as you're going to hand out a fine to a guy who comes up from Aurora, who used his barge to go out and do something. What's your chances of recovering any of that? So I think this is a bigger item than what we're looking at today, and looking at it from one perspective. I think we need to look at it from our residents' perspective and our business owners' perspective, and what is best for them. And I don't think this is what's best for them. Thank you.
Does anybody else come on forward, please?
Morning. Good morning. My name is Ken Cripps. I'm my family's had a cottage on Go Home Lake for over 60 years, and my wife and I also own a property just down the road here, and our main residence in Oak Bay. So obviously we pay a lot of taxes. To me, this problem should be solved by you people. There's plenty of room to build another dock for the contractors, and they got the ability to do it. So why not give them a free permit to do it, lay it out where they can do it, and let them go ahead and do it. So problem solved.
A second dock serving contractors on Go Home Lake is your proposal.
Yeah, or extend the dock that's there. I do have a question about our tax bills as well, but used to be a breakdown of what was going to what on the tax bill. I noticed that that's all changed this year, and this year there's no money allocated for schooling, garbage removal, which has been taken away. So If people want to deduct the garbage removal from their bill, they're unable to do that. Why is that happening?
Do our tax bills have the same detail they had last year? Or at least the
No,
June
it
one?
doesn't.
It's something I can take back and look
Yeah.
into. Not aware that there was a massive change, but I can definitely look into that.
Okay, that's all I got.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, Councilor Bocek. With your mic on.
Thank you. I don't know if you remember, but I met you up at the launch ramp at Go Home Lake this weekend and had a conversation with your wife.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
And at that time, we were looking at a barge sitting right in the launch ramp at Go Home Lake.
That's correct.
And and that is not what a public launch ramp should be used for.
Well, there's nobody using a public ranch now.
No,
ranch
it's
now
frozen
because of
in
ice.
now. But I agree with what you're saying here. Not all portions of this township have the ability or the area to build a compound and put a launch ramp in. But there is some areas that do. So there is some validity to what you're saying. And I'll take that as advice to this councillor. I think you're looking at, moving in the right direction here. Let's say that much. And I appreciated meeting you both
Yeah,
on the
Mr.
weekend.
Hazel, you used to have a cottage on Golden Lake, I understand. And you know what we're going through. It's not difficult, it's not easy having a water access cottage. When, there's always things to build or things to repair. You're always gonna need lumber or something has to be delivered. Fortunately, I got my own truck, so I can deliver the stuff myself, but I think anything that's gonna be have to handled by contractors is gonna be passed down to the consumer. So it's gonna cost everybody on Go Home Lake more money. And other lakes as well. Anyway.
Mayor,
Councilor Predko?
could I just request that somebody from finance help them with their tax bill questions
Chaz already
before they leave though today?
Yes.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Should I come on now? Come on down. Alrighty. Okay, so my name is Susan Schaefer Cripps, and I'm on Golden Lake as well. My husband Ken. And I guess the question I want to ask is, so I decide that I've got a work permit, or sorry, a permit to do some work at our cottage, and I get the wood and put it on the dock. Am I going to be charged?
We're still trying to evolve whatever
I'm
the
just
bylaw is
asking the
going to be.
question. Just asking the question.
Yeah. And that's, again,
Because in your, I got a copy of everything that this meeting is about, and it basically says yes.
No.
Well, it says that you're thinking about it. It doesn't
No,
say yes,
what
you're
it-
thinking about wash machines, dryers, wood, whatever. But you're thinking about, you're contemplating, you're trying to figure out what to do. Right.
So we are talking about commercial operators.
Well, it's not,
So
I mean,
if you are a commercial business, then yes.
so who's gonna stand at that dock, that kid, at that dock, and ask the questions?
Bylaw.
Yeah, good luck to that kid, because I'll tell you something, you see what goes on at that dock. And the amount of stuff, it's not gonna be an easy situation.
It's very obvious, and what we're looking at is the larger commercial operators.
But what you're doing here is punishing them. Why don't you find a solution to help them?
okay.
Troy Wolf is sitting back here, and he must hire over 30-some people, including summer students. He works his ass off, he gets work permits, he does everything by law. So he's gonna get punished. Of course he's gonna get punished. Why, instead of punishing them, help them? Find a solution, right? Find a way to help these guys instead of, screwing them over. Because you know what? All they're doing is when they build another cottage, who gets the tax money?
Well,
You do.
this
You
is
guys do. This township gets it's a win-win for you all the way along, but it's a lose-lose for these contractors. It's actually, it is shameful. It really is. Because at the end of the day, the cottager is going to be paying for this. You're going to get the tax money at the end of it. So find a solution for them. This isn't a solution.
This is one of the reasons we're having this
I
discussion, is
understand
to
that.
get the
I
input.
understand that, but you got to hear what every people have to say. I'm not a contractor. I have used Troy Wolf. He's amazing. He built our cottage. But they, Dream Dogs, these guys do, the amount of work that they do, and they're going to get, the same crap's going to go on to them. You guys have to find another way. Make it, like Kenny said, find a place so that they can, if you don't like where they're offloading their stuff or what they're doing, find a way to help them. Don't hinder them. Yes, I get it. Some people leave crap there, down on Go Home Lake, Miners Bay. I get it. That I don't agree with either. But, find a solution for them. Tell them, find them for doing that or whatever you want to do, right? But at least help the guys.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. If I think of something else, I'll look at my notes and I'll be back. Thank you. Oh, excuse me. Oh yeah, I will be back. Anything else? Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dave with Dream Docs, and appreciate what we're working on here. As Dream Docs, we use pretty much each and every one of the ramps in the township, from 12 Mile Bay to Gibson to 6 Mile to Honey Harbor.
And some of them probably could use your docks.
Some of them have my docks too, actually.
Is that why you're here?
Not always a bad thing either. But I understand what we're looking at. I think the ramps as a whole, as we talk about the ramps as a whole within the township, one thing, and anecdotally noticing at Go Home in particular, as a property owner on Go Home, is the day use fishermen is absolutely exploded on Go Home in the last 5 years, I'll say, post-COVID. So there's that factor. We often use, from a commercial standpoint, we often use our 20-foot work boats. So we're running in, running out. So are the surveyors, the tree guys, the pest control folks, and so on and so forth. So I'm just not sure how that all plays into the big mix. And then we get into the cottage owners who, again, on Go Home and certainly on Georgian Bay as well, we see that with, more and more personal barges, pontoon boats, conversions, work boats, and so on and so forth. So just want to say that there's a big picture, and I don't know what the solution is, but one of my big concern is that we get into an us versus them. The only reason we're on the water is for the ratepayer, to service them, to help them improve their properties and grow your tax base, grow the tax base, our tax base. So, just want to keep that in mind, that it's not just about barges and excavators and front end loaders. And I just ask that you keep all that in mind, because there's a lot of day use. There's surveyors coming from outside of the township. There's tree guys coming in and out all the time. There's a lot of work boats that go through those. And yeah, there's some barges and and we're launching new docks and those sort of stuff for customers too. So we get all that. And I just love to see an improvement on the ramps, because yeah, the ramps are in rough shape. The fact that the fishermen are using them is great. I want people to get out and enjoy the lakes. I want them to be able to enjoy the public lands that we have. But the ramps are going to require work. That means we all have to pay for it. I'm not against that, but give us ramps that are functional and give us a spot to do our job so that we can take care of the property owners.
Okay.
So I'm very focused on Honey Harbor, very different from the rest of the areas. So in your opinion, for Go Home Lake, 12 Mile Bay, other places you go in and out of, how many contractors own property with their own private ramps on those areas?
Outside of Honey Harbor, I can't think of too many. I mean, I think there's one on 6 Mile, even on Gloucester Pool or whatever. I mean, there's really nobody.
All I'm trying to get at is you've highlighted a usage characteristic, which I think is great, and, maybe there's unique consideration for contractors who use all these different places. But Honey Harbor is very different.
Sure.
We have, tons of commercial operators who own property and have their own ramps.
Yeah.
So the commercial ramp
And
is a different story.
Yeah, and we use walls. I mean, we've made that accessible to us. We don't keep a boat there, but I do have access to walls when I need it.
Thank you.
Director Engel.
I just wanted to say thank you for bringing forward the point about just launching boats for accessing as opposed to doing commercial work. The intent is not to impact, no different than someone traveling up and down the road. It will be along the same line as where you would need a road occupancy permit is where you're staging, you're storing materials, that kind of thing, and that will be
Fair.
what we will be looking at. And you're right. If we are charging for it, you have every right to expect us to maintain it to the commercial operation.
My only counterpoint to that is, road occupancy permit, I can drop stuff in my driveway. It's only occasionally that I'm going to spill out onto the road. As a water access property, I don't have that luxury.
Thank you very much. All right, not seeing anybody else coming forward. No, you've had your turn. Excuse me. No. Okay. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm taking this back to council now. Could you please? Yes, you have. Councilor Graziano, you've waited a long time.
Patiently, thank you. After many different digressions. To the lady in red, thank you very much for your candor. It's refreshing and inspirational, to say the least. To the gentleman from, sorry, dreamdocs.ca, thank you very much. You stole my thunder. There were some arguments there that I was going to cite. And so to staff, do we know what percentage of data, or do we have any data for that matter, on the percentage of damage caused by contractor versus recreational boater?
Through you, Mayor Kutsier. I mean, that's not something we'd be able to identify at this time because we have no idea exactly how many contractors are using our ramps. This is part of what permitting would allow us to do. We would know how many contractors are using our ramp. We could ask them to identify what ramps they're using specifically and prioritize those areas for upgrades, maintenance, that end of things. We do know that we see significant washouts from heavy usage. If it is a concrete ramp, we are less likely to have that issue, but we do not have the funds right now to upgrade our ramps for the commercial usage.
So on that, and I appreciate that, thank you. My question was more so, can we determine the root cause of the deterioration of our docks and our facilities? I don't know how you define washout. Maybe your definition is different than mine, but I have seen time and time again transient visitors on 6 Mile Lake coming and towing their boats and squawking their cars and pulling out debris from the lake bed as they're trying to pull their boats out of the water and seeing massive ruts. We also have a carpet on 6 Mile Lake. We don't have a concrete floor. And the boats, or excuse me, the launches there are needing repair, and I believe that we've gone through repair. So I've seen time and time again from my own firsthand witness that the transient visitor tends to cause far more damage than perhaps those the contractors that are there. And I do know the few contractors that have barges on 6 Mile Lake, and I can say that they use the facility or the launches with the utmost respect. Another question, do we require personal liability insurance for launchers at our public launch? If this is a liability concern, do we seek to request that as they come to use our public launches as well. So, I mean, if we're going to apply the liability requirement to contractors, why not apply to any people that use our public facilities?
Our
assets.
liability concern is not the launching of boats, it is the storage of material and staging of activity. That is outside of the normal launching. We have signs in our parking lots say park at own risk. We have other signs that are going up at our launches saying use at our own risk. That protects us from liability. What we're not protected from is when construction materials are stored within our right-of-ways. They create trip and fall hazards. They can impact the environment around them. We see frameworks being left, skids being left, not picked up. All of this creates not only a hazard, but ongoing maintenance for us. And this is what we're trying to address, is the storing and staging of materials. But we can't, some of that material could be there for weeks. We can't necessarily address the contractor that's doing that without spending hours standing there waiting for them to come and pick it up. And then it's very easy for them to say, no, it's not mine. By having a permit in place, we are saying, this is our expectations, this is what we're expecting you to do, and our responsibility is then to make sure those ramps are available for commercial use. Because it does nobody any good if the ramp is in such poor condition that now a lake is locked out because commercial operators can't access.
And I appreciate that. And perhaps I can provide a different perspective, if I may. My thoughts are, why not offer a free permit to our contractors with a respect it or lose it policy? Ultimately, those contractors are using our public launches to support residents who've paid taxes and who've paid for permits to build. So the lumber or the materials that are there are going to the end user, who is the resident who's paid property tax and who has paid the permitting fees. If it's simply a respect our area policy, we could likely seek a way to ensure that they respect our area by having a respect it or lose it policy, whereby if a barger is deemed to have left debris that could cause liability issues amongst the general public, that they then not get re-permitted the following year. And based on the numbers that I'm hearing, I don't feel that we have a large enough barging population that would suggest a major burden to administer a free permitting process onto staff. And perhaps in doing so, we could at the same time capture their liability insurance. No additional costs to them, no additional costs to the ratepayer, and a respect or lose it policy, which would effectively address the issues that I think we have. So with that said, thank you, Ms. Engel.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just two very hopefully quick things I just wanted to point out or ask about. In your table of launches and ramps, the ones that are identified not for commercial, are those off really, are you going to try to bring those up to a commercial grade or just keep them as a non-commercial grade and exclude them from this discussion going forward? And the one ramp that's not on this list is Stewart Lake, so that's kind of why I was curious.
The Stewart Lake ramp, it was upgraded. It's one of our two that have the honeycomb concrete. So it is upgraded for commercial use. The two that I have identified that are not available for commercial use are in such poor condition that it would be unsafe for commercial operators for heavy operations. I do not at this time have any capital funds to upgrade those ramps.
No, and I don't expect, I mean, I'm not asking you to, I'm just actually asking for clarification as to why Stewart Lake's not on the list if it is upgraded. And is it not kind of within your consideration for this project, or is it just because it's not on the list?
No, sorry, so Stuart Lake is on the list.
I don't see it anywhere.
I don't have it right
That's
in front of
okay.
me.
If it's missing.
But it is, Stuart Lake is
Sure.
one of the 2 ramps that we have
Yeah, no. And
that's already been upgraded.
so perhaps I will.
That's Kilty Bay.
Kilty Bay, okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sorry. So that is already upgraded
Okay.
for commercial use.
And then,
I know there's requests for us to upgrade the dock. The dock is very short, but the ramp is,
no, that's okay. And that is for more pleasure use and for cottagers to launch. It's not really, people don't have the same kind of commercial deliveries on that lake that they do on other lakes. And just to actually kind of follow up on what Councillor Graziano had said, I have been thinking, rather than having a large fee, if there's a retainer or a security deposit piece of it, that if you don't know about how the maintenance will go through in the year, that it's something that could be carried forward like a reserve for that contractor, so that you have assurance that they'll be working within your guidelines, but you're also it's something that could be refunded when they expire or don't renew their license. Just a thought.
and through you, Mayor Graziano, I don't think I'd ever want to put something in place that we would be banning commercial operators from using a ramp, especially if it's to access a lake where that's the only access. We're not looking to punish or make the life harder of commercial operators. We're just trying to find a balance to be able to maintain our infrastructure to the level that they need and that the public needs, and protect ourselves from liability and protect the environment. The other item that hasn't really come up in conversation is the onshore mooring. Again, we're not looking to restrict or punish them for that. What we're looking at is to find a balance, because we have a number of areas where a dock would not be permitted. So we want to ensure that we're not seeing shoreline mooring in protected areas. That again is a benefit to the commercial operator, because if they have a mooring permit, now that's their spot. So.
Okay, thank you. While you were mentioning the mooring, I had one thought that I'll just add on with the mayor's indulgence, is that I don't know how we would police whether or not there was somebody there overnight. And just as mentioned in your report that there's no overnight persons allowed, but we wouldn't have any bylaw ability to really monitor that. So just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Councillor Bocek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, to our operations director. Obviously, with all this research and everything that's been done to bring this report to us, can you give me the estimated revenues that would be generated by the commercial operators paying an annual fee, knowing the number of commercial operators that are within the township, how much you plan on charging them per year, what revenues are going to be gained by that, and what percentage of those revenues are going to cover the costs to do any maintenance, insurance, whatever. If you have those numbers, that would be great, because I think they'd be so minuscule it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't make any difference to what we're doing today.
And through you, Mayor Kutsier, this is a very preliminary introduction. We've identified gaps within the bylaw. We are asking council if they want us to investigate further. If we do so, then we would, yes, come back and say, charging an administrative fee, these are the benefits. We ensure that they're aware of environmental protections. We have certificate of insurance. Charging $500 a year will cover X for maintenance. Charging this much will put money into reserves for upgrading launches to this degree. But no, I don't have those at this stage. We're looking for council's direction on whether or not we go down that rabbit hole.
Okay, because that would be very helpful, that if we knew that amount of income that would be coming in from these contractors, if it's going to be 100 contractors at $500 per contractor, you take that value and you look at it, all the people that are getting advantage of these contractors doing work, everybody within the township, it might be 0.1% increase on a tax bill to do what you're wanting to do, which is very minuscule. And that way, everybody in the town, I use the boat launch ramp. I live on dry land over here behind the township, but I use the Port Severn launch ramp. I use the Honey Harbor launch ramp. I use the Go Home launch ramp. I'm a taxpayer. And if my taxes went up $6 to allow everybody to use these launch ramps, I'm not going to be too concerned with this. So that's why I've asked, and if we bring this forward to council, I certainly would like those numbers so that we can make a final decision on it. And I appreciate the report you've given us. I just think we need more information to make a decision. Thank you.
And just out of, that nice segue into the motion in front of us, which is basically we direct staff to review the public docs bylaw for the inclusion of additional language regarding the use of launches for the commercial operations and updates to the fee schedule. In other words, they have to come back with their information on that. But that's with greater information, we might or might not be able to make a decision one way or another. All right, we've been at it an hour and a half. Anybody want to add anything at this point or to move on? Councilor Graziano.
Registered vote. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. I have moved by Councilor Cooper, second by Councilor Graziano. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole recommends that staff be directed to review the public docs bylaw for the inclusion of additional language regarding the use of launches for commercial operations and updates to the fee schedule. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Some of us are.
Okay.
Let the record show Councilor Graziano has requested a recorded vote. Councilor Graziano,
No.
Councilor Hazelton,
Yes.
Councilor Jarvis. Oh, he's gone. Okay. Councilor Predko,
Yes.
Councilor Bocek,
No.
Councilor Cooper,
Yes.
Mayor Kutsier.
Yes.
Let the record show the motion's carried 4-2.
All right, thank you very much. I think we had very good discussion. Greatly appreciate all the input. And I know that staff will be taking that into account as they do further research into the whole matter, but we appreciate the input. Thank you very much. And with that, we have one item of new business. Councilor Predko.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, just bring up this report that, and this is for discussion purposes, obviously, and just trying to get a sense of what we can do directionally to try to target residential or commercial growth in our urban centers primarily, and what tools we have and what interest there might be to direct that going forward. So the province has given targets for growing. They've also said that they want to cut development fees in half. I don't think they've said how we do that, and maybe this is where we can target different areas to have a benefit towards their development fees versus other areas where there's not as much interest in growing the community size. But some of the things that I had been thinking of and trying to consider was something like a development fee discount or holiday in certain areas in the urban centers, especially along roads that are already serviced, and the development fees that go towards increasing service may not be as necessary as in other areas. Additionally, potentially identifying some business improvement areas. A lot of our downtown areas are currently zoned residential, and as we know, we have some places that are hoping to change those properties into a commercial designation since they're on the main street. And maybe we have an incentive to help people in those kinds of situations to fast track a zoning change from residential to commercial. And maybe there's some other opportunities to work with or contact people along places like Lake Joseph Road that used to have commercial activity, but along there as well, there's also quite large areas of residentially zoned properties. Is there an opportunity to incentivize them to try to develop something on those lands that they have that are developable? So this motion is intended to stimulate conversation and get ideas and hopefully come to a resolution that we can send something to staff to further investigate or pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of comments, if I may. I believe in this term of council, we underwent a development fee review in which staff had presented a fee schedule with a 10-year plan of increases over the next 10 years. And I believe that a registered vote was requested from council at the time, I believe myself being the requestor. And I'm wondering if staff can, in any subsequent conversation that may come forward on this matter, should we proceed with this, bring that count back, because I'd be curious to know at the time whether we voted for the increase in development fees rather than the decrease. If memory serves me correctly, I believe my position was that we should not increase development fees to make ourselves more competitive, as well as to open up development in the corridors that potentially could lend for development. And if memory serves me correctly, the fee increase schedule over the 10-year plan passed council. And I'd be curious to remind myself on who voted for the fee increase. Second question that I have is directed to staff is how much time would be required in order to develop a report addressing the request here? How much time do we feel would be needed to do this, and where would that fall within our priority queue? Because I'm concerned that staff's time, we have issues that we need to address within this municipality, and affordable housing, of course, is one of them, as it is in the greater Muskoka region itself. And I just want to make sure that from a priority point of view, we're allocating time based on what we deem to be our highest priorities versus our lowest priorities. So I'm curious to know what the total amount of time would be required to address the request, and where would this fall within our priority queue. And then lastly, I'd love a report from staff, if we are going to move forward with this, on how we can address the affordable housing concern with regards to the waterfront communities commanding such a high resale values, and whether or not we can develop affordable housing within our communities, unlike perhaps the larger urban areas to the north, Bracebridge, Huntsville, Gravenhurst, whereby they could adopt smaller housing units and backyards and then re-renting them to potential would-be renters. So I'm just curious to know, where would we be able to build and develop affordable housing? Because from what I am aware of this community, outside of the two smaller urban areas such as Port Severn and MacTier, it's mostly waterfront communities with no backlot development. So a couple of questions there to staff, and whether we can pull the development fee report and the vote count on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Radigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coutier, to members of council. I just kind of wanted to start off with the background of development charges. So back in 2024 and prior to, the province had already mandated a 5-year decrease in development charges, where your first year after doing a development charge study, you would only be collecting 80% to 85, 90, 95 to 100%. In 2024, Bill 23, I believe, was passed that outlined exemptions for affordable housing, affordable and attainable housing. Yet at that time, they did not identify what the definition was of affordable and attainable housing. They have now. We have, it is based on market value, and each area and township has a designated market value that they would be reaching in order to become affordable or attainable, and that includes rent to own as well. One of the stipulations is that the development has to be affordable for 25 years. So we would go into an agreement with a developer and ensure that whether it be the rental or the market price be within the prescribed limits that the province had prescribed. At this point in time, since 2024, I have not come across any development that would meet those thresholds. The Director of Planning could correct me if I'm wrong, but those are mandatory exemptions that are already in place. We are required to follow them. The district is required to follow them as well. If the township were to look at some sort of discount, that discount would then be transferred to the backs of taxpayers. So development charges, when we do a background study, is based on the amount of development charges we've collected to date and the projects that we are saying are required as a result of growth. And so there's an analysis that goes into play, and we use consultants to do it because it is very high level. And so based on the last development charges study, those projects that came forward to council were approved as part of that development charges background study, and hence resulted in an increase in development charges. If council were to choose to decrease those fees, that is fine, but those projects would then either need to be relooked at, or that funding would need to be redirected to the taxpayer. In addition, I know Councillor Predko, you had stated that the province had recently announced, the province as well as the federal government announced a reduction of 50% to development charges. At this point in time, they haven't released any additional information, but what I am aware of is they are focusing on municipalities that make up 80% of the population. And they are looking for municipalities that make a reduction of 50% and up to 3 years. By doing so, they would replenish or make whole the municipalities if they were to reduce development charges. So ultimately, municipalities wouldn't be transferring that burden onto our taxpayers. So ultimately, I think really the question is, there is no magic pot of money, unfortunately. So these are projects that we have that are approved. And there was a reason for the increase. We are happy to go back and look at our development charges, but we would be required to do another study. And usually that's not recommended for another 5 to 10 years. I'd also think it'd be very interesting in terms of the applications that we've received to date, if our Director of Planning has any input on those, if any of them have ever qualified. But to date, I have not seen any that qualify. Thank you.
Dr. Whitlam?
Thank you, through the mayor and to council. So on the housing affordability piece, the opportunities there really lie in our serviced urban centers. So in the Georgian Bay context, that'd be Port Severn and MacTier. And certainly that includes, the provision of a range of housing types and densities on full services. But it also includes additional residential dwelling units. As you know, there's certainly a great deal of support at the provincial level and in the Planning Act for additional units on properties, whether apartments in houses, apartments over detached garages, etc. And those additional residential units could also occur on rural properties, on private services. I would not encourage additional units in our waterfront areas. There are already pressures from an environmental standpoint, and I don't think a discussion of housing affordability and waterfront properties frankly work well in the same sentence. There's a different market there. Certainly through the official plan and zoning bylaw review, the additional residential units provisions to make them permitted to create greater as of right permissions, so that someone does not need to come and seek planning approval every time they want to put an additional apartment on their property, so that they can go straight to building permit, is something that this council will see coming forward. And then beyond that, again, I mean, aside from partnering with levels of governments and taking advantage of those sorts of opportunities, we'll continue to support a range of housing types and densities in our urban centers. On the commercial side, some of the discussion brought to mind something that I don't think Georgian Bay has taken advantage of to date, and that's our ability under the Planning Act to adopt community improvement plans. And a community improvement plan can be done for various reasons. It's to support a commercial district, it could be to preserve heritage properties, it could be to support housing, but it identifies a specific defined area, and through the legislation there's a suite of incentives that can be used to incentivize certain types of business opportunities or growth. But as the Director of Finance mentioned, these things all come with a price tag. You can write up a great community improvement plan, but unless you're into providing grants or interest-free loans for eligible businesses or forms of redevelopment, it's hard to get traction. But they are effective if there's budget allocated to them, and I've seen them work. Where you see them typically in Ontario is in downtowns, the typical Ontario Main Street downtown, where there's facade improvements, streetscape improvements, new businesses coming in. Those are usually, you'll find that those are done under the auspices of a community improvement plan with an incentive package for those property owners. So those are some easy opportunities, I think. And some of them, like I said, particularly the additional residential units, that's already going to be coming forward as one of our priority items through the official plan and zoning bylaw review. So that'll come forward sooner rather than later in the process. Another consideration, and I heard talk about efficiencies and streamlining the planning approval process. The other thing is providing in our official plan and zoning bylaw the necessary enabling policies to support community planning permits. We already have policies and we can improve upon them, and what the community planning permit is, it's again provided for under the Planning Act, and it's essentially a process that combines a land use change approval like a zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance, and it combines that with site plan approval all into one permit instead of 2 or 3 separate planning applications. So there's efficiencies in time and process there, because an applicant is not going through multiple applications that have to be sequential sometimes. But also a community planning permit, to be efficient, also relies on certain types of applications being delegated to staff. So giving authority to staff, and this is defined in a community planning permit bylaw, what sort of applications can be approved at the staff level versus those that have to come to council and go through a public process with notice periods, etc. So that's something else we're exploring through the official plan and zoning bylaw review.
Your worship, I'm sorry, I had one additional question to staff, which wasn't answered, which is how much time would a report such as what's being requested be required, and where priority-wise would it fall?
Through you, Mayor Cousier, to Councilor Graziano. I think it would be a multi-approach to write that report. It would take more than one department, I believe. I have a really good understanding of development charges and could provide that aspect, but I do believe that it would probably require some of SMT. I don't have a timeline, unfortunately, for you.
Councilor Wojcik.
Thank you, and through your Mayor, a couple of questions, just because I'm not very educated when it comes to development fees, and I'll be quite honestly with you. So my questions would be to either our finance department or to our planning department. First question is development fees. Are they charged on additions or expansions to existing residents? That would be my first question.
Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Bocek. No, we do not charge development charges for existing dwellings or additions to dwellings or up to 3 additional residential units.
You can tell how long it's been since I did any of that. Secondly, perhaps to planning, when it comes to a small business, and I think that's what my companion here was talking about, increasing the amount of small business in a small town area. I know we've been working on a refresh MACTIER plan, which is going to come one day or another. But I'll give you a typical example that came before us, and that was a home that wanted to be converted into a small business or a portion of it on the main street. They've had to jump through some hoops, being the planning process, the building permit process, traffic studies ordered. It amounts for selling something for very little profit. Would development fees take place in a case like that, where you're taking a residential home, changing the zoning, building half of it as a commercial business, and then on top of all the fees they're paying, would they pay a development fee?
Through the mayor, so maybe I'll begin. In the context of that, the primary use is residential, so it's the addition of a home-based business essentially within the dwelling. So if it was a conversion of the entire property to commercial, yes, commercial development charges would apply. I don't recall, and I'm looking at the Director of Finance, how our development charge bylaw deals with home-based businesses and whether the DCs apply. So we'd have to look that up.
Okay, that's just an entry into what I was thinking about, because like my fellow councillor here said, we all know that most of MACTIER has been blocked off once the Highway 400 went through. It used to be Highway 69, go right through MACTIER. All kinds of businesses flourished. Now when you go up 169, all those businesses are closed, except for one. That's because the traffic has been rerouted. For some of those property owners, there may be incentive to rebuild if development fees were either made affordable, or if we took into a fact that we're trying to refresh MACTIER, that we would figure out a way not to charge development fees. But from what I understand from our finance officer, this is provincially regulated, legislated, or is this township legislated?
Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Bocek. There are municipalities that don't have development charges. So as a result, we do. We have bylaws that I think has been existing for numbers of years for development charges. There are specific development charges that you could waive, but ultimately, a lot of the times you're looking at industrial DCs that I've seen waived in the past. But there are some municipalities that do not charge DCs.
So during the process of going through planning and building, they would have the ability to come to us and ask for the development fees to be waived. Am I correct in that? And then they would be either a decision of council or a decision of staff?
Through you, Mayor Coutier, to Councillor Bocek. To waive development charges, I guess I don't look at it as a waiving. You would be looking at requesting council to provide a grant to make the development charges whole. So the money has to come from somewhere.
Okay. That's good. That's great. That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
I'm going to comment first. I think there's a little bit of, I don't want to say confusion, but I think we have to separate a few things. One is development charges. DCs are per a formula set by the province. The province has said that we have mandated that if the what's being built. I mean, and DCs are predominantly for new development, new lots that are being created, new residences, new businesses, etc. And you know, we're mandated to waive them when it comes to what's defined as affordable or attainable. But I think what I'm reading in this report, and Councillor Predko can certainly correct me, and if I'm wrong, I still want to make the comments, is that we also have all the charges with regards to, let me call it planning fees, building permits, road access fees, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a significant portion of the costs faced by somebody who's doing I'll call it a change of use, that kind of thing. That's apart from any development charges that may be applicable, as well as let me call it the approval process. And we sometimes have things that come in front of us in which applicants have produced half a dozen or more reports from various experts at various tens of thousands of dollars of costs, versus other applications that come in front of us that we get no outside reports or almost none because it's more straightforward or the property is less sensitive or, various reasons. And so I think that's part of what I'm reading here is how do we help the small scale individual who maybe wants to add an extra residence on their property or maybe wants to add some sort of business function or what have you, separate from the development charges.
If I could add one more comment, Mr. Mayor, something we also didn't talk about that's happening at a provincial scale is currently Bill 98. I think if you look at the contents of that, a lot of it focuses on some of what we've heard here in terms of standardizing and streamlining the planning approvals process, encouraging more housing, finding efficiencies. That's on, and the province is considering sort of a standardized portal, if you will, for all municipalities to follow as a template. So that's being considered at the provincial level. We'll certainly at the local level continue to look for those efficiencies, right? Like I said, the easy one in terms of affordability for, the family looking to provide housing for their adult children. Now, I think, again, those additional residential units, up to 3 per lot, and if we can find opportunities to permit those as of right, that's a huge piece, I think, for the affordable housing component in this municipality.
Councillor Predko. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, and just briefly, and thank you for that. That was one of my kind of outstanding questions. The other thing that I did want to really reiterate that's in the report is that in the urban center of MacTier in particular, there's a very large swath of land that is zoned residential that is undeveloped. How is a township, if that is desirable to be developed, how do we encourage somebody to look at that piece of land and determine whether or not they are interested in some kind of housing project that would support our objectives?
Through the mayor, so one comment I can offer is some of those lands in urban MacTier that are at the policy level available for residential development are not zoned residential.
I'm looking at zoned residential.
Okay, so what I was going to say was encourage we could, through our processes, ensure lands are pre-zoned as ready they can be. How to encourage purchasers for those zoned residential lands, that's a tougher question, I think, one that all municipalities are struggling with. But we're, and it was touched on earlier, embarking on a process, and that includes Refresh MacTier. When you make places a place where people want to be, then that creates a certain synergy and growth and momentum. So if we can do our best as a municipality to put in place elements to make communities more complete, people will come.
Sure. I mean, currently the land that is zoned residential that's not developed is about the size of MacTier today. So there's a lot of land that is available, but it's just not on anybody's priority list. Thank you.
Which begs the question, maybe the landowner isn't interested. Yeah. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to address two things. I think there was a couple of questions that were rhetorical, but were nonetheless put out into the ether, and I thought I'd comment on them. I think one of them was, how do we support the local or the small commercial owner who wants to develop? And I think that I would suggest that that small mom and pop shop come before council, apply for a discount or relief. That's what we're here for. And I would rather do it on a case-by-case basis and even have an opportunity to meet the applicant to see what they're potentially proposing and hear about their ideas and proposals rather than find a way to have staff develop a report on it. And so I'm not quite sure that a report is required in that context. And then the other question that was put out there is how there are some lands within MacTier that are ripe for development, and how do we encourage development of those lands by way of attracting investors? And I would say that RMAC is now official, and perhaps we spool up a working group that can solicit investment, development investment in the MacTier community. So there's a great option for RMAC to seek ways to develop the community. And so again, I think that those are two potential wonderful opportunities. Get the person here in front of council so we meet them and understand what it is that they're looking for. And secondly, have RMAC seek investment and development for MacTier. Thanks.
You. I don't see any other hands raised. I have moved by Councillor Predko, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Whereas the Township of Georgian Bay has the authority to consider measures that may encourage new commercial and residential development. And whereas Council wishes to explore options to improve affordability and support more efficient development approval processes in targeted areas, now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to report back on potential approaches to encourage development, including options to improve affordability and streamline processes where appropriate. All those in favor? Well, I'm going to vote in favor. I see 3 not voting in favor. All those against? That fails, I believe, when it's a tie vote. Oh, Jarvis is back. I apologize, Councillor Jarvis. You disappeared, and how did you vote? Yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay. Okay, so that carries 4-3. I apologize again, Councillor Jarvis, that you returned so silently.
That's amazing, isn't it? Technology's phenomenal.
You may.
I understand that we've requested a report come back to council, but I think perhaps some of our staff are overwhelmed by the amount of work they're trying to undergo right now. And so I don't think it'd be fair to ask them to bring a report back next month or possibly even next month, but I would like to see a report down the road.
And we didn't have a timeline in this.
Good, okay. Great.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Bocek.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, sir.
Sorry, just a quick question on the subject that we just discussed. I'd like to see a report at some point, and I don't want to overtax our staff, but I think as part of that report, we need to see how any credit that would be given to a business and to incentivize them could be done in such a way that it's even, not just arbitrary. Come in front of council, tell your story, and you get a reduction. I think we need to think about how it's going to be fair, and I'm having difficulty picturing that. Thank you.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved, the Committee of the Whole is now adjourned at 2:08 p.m. to reconvene on May 5, 2026, or at the call of the chair. All those in favor? And that is carried. And I guess that means we're done. Thank you very much.